The creature stood on the stainless steel exam platform, hackles raised, amber eyes fixed on the ceiling light as if it might descend and attack. A low rumble echoed in its throat, not quite a growl, not quite anything Dr. Tharnel had ever documented in his 308 cycles as a certified xenoveterinary specialist. Dr. Tharnel adjusted his visor, leaned forward, and carefully tapped on his recorder. Subject 729B, unknown species. Quadrupedal, approximately 1.4 meters at the shoulder. Dense fur, elongated snout. Displays auditory sensitivity and potential predatory aggression. Possible Class B threat. Recommend immediate containment protocol review. The creature sneezed. Tharnel flinched back. His head brushed the low containment dome and he hissed at the static zap. Unacceptable, he muttered, adjusting the translator node hooked behind his upper earlobe. This thing shouldn't be out of stasis. The door hissed open behind him and a voice called in English, cheerful and entirely oblivious to the tension in the room. "Ah, there you are. You found Tundra." Tharnel turned and narrowed his inner eye at the human entering the lab. He wore a brown jacket with one torn sleeve and boots streaked with red dust from the outside barrens. His name was written on a badge pinned crookedly to his chest, Bennett Granger, Terraforming Unit 7. "You know this animal?" Tharnel asked. Bennett grinned. "Know him? I raised him. Got him from Earth when he was a pup. He's a gray wolf mix. Real gentle once you get to know him." "Gentle," Tharnel repeated, deadpan. Tundra licked his own paw with a pink tongue the length of a Panari eel. "You brought a predatory mammal to a regulated planetary outpost and failed to declare it during intake?" Tharnel's voice rose by 2 octaves. "I did declare him," Bennett replied, walking over and scratching behind the creature's ear. Tundra leaned into it with a huff of contentment. "There was a box labeled pets. I checked it. Twice, even. That box is for domesticated species recognized by the Galactic Biological Safety Council," Tharnel snapped. "This is not a recognized species. It has no classification in our system." It growled at my assistant. "It threw a containment net." Bennett looked down. "He doesn't like strangers. Especially ones with 12 fingers and laser scalpels." Tharnel stiffened. "That is speciesist. Point is, he's not dangerous unless you provoke him. He's more afraid of you than you are of him." Tundra sneezed again. This time it sounded intentional. Tharnel pointed at the creature. "That is not fear. That is a biological threat display. I am submitting this for emergency quarantine." Bennett let out a breath and crouched beside the platform. "Tundra, buddy, come on. You're making a bad impression." The creature's ears perked. It dropped its shoulders and wagged its tail, an actual tail, long and bushy, sweeping across the polished floor with a soft thwop thwop thwop. Tharnel blinked. "What is that motion?" "It means he's happy." "That cannot be accurate." Bennett grinned. "Want me to show you?" Before Tharnel could protest, Bennett reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, cracked rubber ball. At the sight of it, Tundra's posture changed entirely, ears up, tongue lolling, hind legs bouncing with anticipation. "If he's a monster," Bennett said, standing, "he's the kind that loves fetch." He tossed the ball down the corridor. Tundra took off like a meteor. Tharnel flinched again, then gawked as the creature skidded around the corner and returned seconds later, ball in mouth, tail wagging furiously. "He's well trained," Bennett said. "And housebroken." "Mostly." Tharnel stared. "That does not mitigate the potential threat. But it proves he responds to commands. Watch this." Bennett held up a hand. "Tundra, sit." The creature sat. The slab under him creaked. "Lay down." Tundra flopped onto his side with a theatrical groan. Tharnel's upper eye twitched. "You have conditioned a Class B biohazard to perform recreational posturing." Bennett gave a small shrug. "Earth dogs have been doing this for thousands of years. He's just a little bigger. Size is not the issue. This outpost houses over 600 sentient beings of varying biologies. If this creature triggers a defense response from even one species, he won't. He already did." Tharnel jabbed a finger at a dented panel near the door. He barked at a Vocari engineer. The poor thing dropped a plasma welder on its own foot. Bennett winced. "Yeah, that's on me. I should have told people he barks." "Barks? You know, loud noise. Comes from the throat. He does it when he's excited." Tharnel sighed deeply through all 4 of his lungs. "I will require a full genome analysis, physical capacity test, neural scan, and a behavior review conducted by a council-certified ethologist." Bennett straightened. "Fine, but I'm staying with him." "That is not." "I'm staying." You want to poke and prod my dog, I'm gonna be right there. Tharnel stared at him for a long moment. You are unusually attached to this animal. That's what humans do. We bond. Tharnel opened his mouth, then closed it. Very well. But understand, if this creature fails even one of the tests, it will be removed from the outpost. Bennett's jaw tightened. Understood. The first scan went poorly. Tundra didn't like the neural imaging device. He didn't like the way it hummed, the way it flickered, or the way Tharnel approached with a long wand and no treats. He's not food motivated, Bennett said, holding Tundra's collar. I do not understand that sentence. He doesn't care about food as a reward. You've got to use praise. I am not going to praise a creature that has tried to bite me 3 times. He's just nervous. Tundra growled again. Nervousness does not involve teeth, Tharnel said. Actually, for canines it kind of does. Do not lecture me on biology. Bennett sighed. Then stop waving the wand like you're going to jab him. Let me try. Tharnel reluctantly handed over the scanner. Bennett knelt beside Tundra, whispered something into the creature's ear, then slowly passed the device over his head. The scanner blinked green. See? No brain anomalies. Just a big old softie in there. Tharnel checked the results. Neural pathways were complex, active, and within expected parameters for a mammalian predator. No signs of aggression centers being overstimulated. But still, perhaps, Tharnel admitted, he is not as monstrous as I assumed. Tundra chose that moment to sneeze again. Right into Tharnel's face. The physical capacity test was worse. Tundra was placed in a reinforced simulation chamber with various obstacles, walls to climb, platforms to leap, moving targets to track. Bennett watched through the observation window, arms crossed. You sure this is necessary? He asked. If he is to remain, we must establish limitations. Physical capacity is essential data. The test began. Tundra darted between obstacles, leapt 3 meters onto a moving platform, then swatted a drone out of the air with one paw. The drone shattered. Bennett winced. Sorry. He thinks flying things are prey. Tharnel's eyes bulged. He is faster than expected. Stronger, too. Yeah, but he still sleeps like 18 hours a day. I find that unlikely. You should see him after a big meal. Total couch potato. The chamber door beeped and Tundra came padding out, tongue flopping. Tharnel backed up. He will need a containment permit. Sure. Got a form. Several. Bennett groaned. Of course you do. Later that week, Tharnel was called to medbay. Apparently, a worker from the deep tunnels had suffered a laceration. Nothing life-threatening. When Tharnel arrived, the human was already seated on the exam table. Blood had soaked through his pant leg and his face was pale. What happened? Tharnel asked. Bennett, sitting beside the man and holding a compress to his thigh, gave a sheepish look. Tundra did it. Tharnel froze. Explain. He was spooked. A siren went off unexpectedly and he lunged. Caught Gregor's leg. Gregor gave a weak thumbs up. Totally my fault. I startled him. Tharnel frowned. This is exactly what I warned about. He didn't mean to. He's a good boy. He is a biological weapon with fur. Bennett's jaw clenched. He's a pet. A scared one. And he's already locked in my quarters until the council reviews everything. Tharnel looked at the wounded man, then back at Bennett. He will need to be evaluated again. Fine. And if he fails? I know. There was a long silence. Then Tharnel said, I will supervise it myself. Tundra would have one more chance. But the outpost was already murmuring. And Tharnel, despite himself, had started to feel something unfamiliar when he looked at the creature. Curiosity. Maybe even empathy. He did not like it. The evaluation chamber, tucked beneath Subdeck C, was sterile in a way that made Tharnel's skin slick with unease. It wasn't the cleanliness he appreciated that. It was the silence. Normally used for high-anxiety species undergoing sensory acclimation, the chamber was padded wall-to-wall in a sound-dampening compound that absorbed even footsteps. It felt like standing inside a vacuum-sealed thought. Tundra paced. Not fast, not frantic. Just slow, deliberate loops around the perimeter. His claws made no sound against the floor. His nose twitched with each pass near the air vent. Bennett stood nearby, arms folded, eyes flicking between the creature and the observation panel embedded in the wall. Tharnel watched from the other side of the glass, flanked by 2 members of the Xenobehavioral Subcommittee. One was a blue-skinned Relari with a head like a flattened teardrop and 3 eyes that blinked independently. The other, a translucent kinth with a nervous habit of excreting a citrus-scented mist whenever spoken to. Neither had said a word. Tharnel broke the silence first. He's acting calmer than expected. The Relari blinked all 3 eyes in sequence. Could be a stress lull. Some species exhibit temporary passivity before an outburst. If that's true, the Kinth murmured, that outburst could rupture the dome. Tharnel tapped the panel. We've reinforced it with graviton mesh. He won't break through. Inside, Bennett squatted, pulled something from his coat, and held it out. Tundra stopped pacing. The R'lyari leaned forward. What is that? Tharnel frowned. It appears to be a cloth animal. Simian, perhaps? The Kinth's mist intensified. A totem. No, Tharnel muttered. A toy. Tundra took the stuffed object in his teeth with exaggerated care, then curled up in the corner, tail wrapped around his body. He began chewing gently, paws folded beneath him. The three aliens watched in silence. Are we witnessing a nesting behavior? The R'lyari asked. No, Tharnel said again, slower this time. We are witnessing comfort. The Kinth's mist turned faint pink. That is what humans call cute, I believe. The R'lyari made a low, skeptical hum. Tharnel straightened. We begin the stimuli sequence now. If he reacts as predicted, we move to phase 2. He keyed in the first trigger, a low-frequency tremor similar to the seismic pulses used in mining operations. It was barely perceptible, just enough to cause a ripple in the lights. Tundra's ears twitched. He lifted his head but didn't stand. Bennett pressed a hand to his shoulder, said something the panel didn't pick up, and Tundra lowered his head again. The R'lyari noted it on a data pad. Mild alertness. No aggression. Tharnel increased the intensity. This time, the floor shivered. The Kinth flinched. Inside the chamber, Tundra stood, turned once in a circle, then sat. His hackles weren't raised. His tail thumped once against the wall. Still no threat response, said Tharnel. Try auditory next, the Kinth suggested. Tharnel selected a standard distress call, one commonly used in evacuation drills. It blared from the ceiling in a sharp, staccato rhythm. Tundra stood again, this time stiffly. He moved to Bennett's side and pressed his body against the human's leg. Not cowering. Not posturing. Just anchoring. Bennett rested a hand on the creature's head. The R'lyari scribbled furiously. He's not reacting to the sound. He's reacting to his human's reaction to the sound. He's protecting him, Tharnel said. Or thinks he should. The Kinth's mist turned blue. That's not predatory behavior. Tharnel didn't answer. Several minutes later, the sequence ended. The chamber lights dimmed to signal closure. Tundra yawned, stretched, then retrieved the stuffed simian from the floor and trotted over to Bennett's pack, where he dropped it with almost ceremonial care. The R'lyari turned to Tharnel. He's emotionally tethered. Not just trained. That's rare. Tharnel nodded slowly. It may also be useful. Useful how? Asked the Kinth. Human-animal bonds are known to encourage neurochemical stability. If this creature can perform that function across species lines. You want to study emotional cross-regulation? The R'lyari asked with a raised crest. I want to see if it can be replicated. Bennett exited the chamber a few minutes later with Tundra padding beside him, tongue lolling. The creature seemed utterly unbothered by the trial. You saw how he did? Bennett asked, looking straight at Tharnel. We saw, Tharnel said. I'll admit. He displayed more restraint than I expected. He's got more sense than most people I know, Bennett replied. He just doesn't speak your language. Then he'll need an interpreter, Tharnel said, already typing notes into his device. Bennett raised an eyebrow. You volunteering? I'm assigning myself to his case. Because you trust him now? No. Because I don't. 3 days later, Tharnel found himself standing in the Rec Arcade, an area he had visited exactly once before and had sworn never to enter again. The cacophony of flashing lights, erratic beeps, and overlapping laughter made his sensory glands ache. Tundra was lying under a bench, chin resting on his paws, eyes following the movements of a small group of children from the mining families. They darted between game tables, oblivious to the creature's gaze. He's watching to make sure they don't fall, Bennett said from behind him. Tharnel didn't turn. He's watching their necks. You always this optimistic? My job requires skepticism. One of the children, a small girl with a shock of red curls and one synthetic leg, tripped on a loose cable. Before Tharnel could even register the motion, Tundra was on his feet. He moved like a ripple, closed the gap in 2 bounds, and stopped beside her. He didn't touch her. Just stood there, tail still, head lowered. The girl looked up, blinked, then giggled and grabbed onto his fur to pull herself up. Tundra didn't flinch. He just waited until she was upright, then walked her back to the game table. Bennett folded his arms. Still think he wants to eat someone? Tharnel didn't answer. Later, back in his lab, Tharnel reviewed the footage. Frame by frame. He paused it when Tundra's eyes fixed on the girl's fall. He zoomed in, tracked the dilation of the pupils, the shifting of weight. There was no hesitation. No calculation. Just movement. Instinct. He made a note. That night, Tharnel did something he hadn't done in years. He sent a message to the Interplanetary Veterinary Ethics Board. Not a complaint. Not a warning. A request. He asked for temporary clearance to run a trust-based cognition trial on a non-catalogued Earth species. He didn't specify why. Another week passed. Tundra became a blurry streak on the outpost's internal cams. Appearing beside drop tools, wandering into climate control hatches to fetch lost drones, nudging open med lockers when someone forgot their stabilizers. He didn't bark. He didn't bite. He just showed up. And one morning, Tharnel found a crushed stim capsule on his lab floor, right beside a pair of shredded gloves. He followed the trail to his assistant's desk where a half-eaten ration bar sat, untouched. "What happened?" he asked. His assistant, a young LYRN with a habit of chewing on data cards, shrugged. "I passed out. Blood sugar drop. Woke up and the creature was there." "Tundra." "Yeah." He dropped the ration bar in my lap. Then left. Tharnel stared at the gloves again. He chewed through the lockbox. Apparently. Tharnel sat down, slowly, as if the gravity had thickened. He looked at the gloves, then at the door. Then he tapped his comms. "Bennett." "Yeah?" came the voice. "I need you and the animal in Lab 6. Now. Everything okay? I'm going to teach him how to use a terminal." Silence. Then, what? He's not just responding. He's choosing. And I want to know how far that goes. Another pause. Then Bennett said, "I'll bring snacks." Tharnel didn't laugh. But he didn't stop him either. Tharnel's lab was still recovering from the last time a Zarnari pollen spore had ruptured in the humidity vent, and the faint scent of roasted mushrooms clung to the walls like guilt. The air was dry now, scrubbed, but the scent lingered. Tundra didn't seem to mind. He lay stretched out near the center console, head resting on the base of an overturned diagnostic stool, eyes half-lidded with the kind of serenity that made Tharnel deeply suspicious. Bennett leaned against the far wall, arms folded, watching with the cautious optimism of someone who knew the dog was smarter than he let on but wasn't sure if that was a good thing. "I've cleared the interface," Tharnel said, adjusting the projection height on the terminal. "Removed any non-essential commands. Simplified the input to a 4-icon system, one for food, one for discomfort, one for approval, and one for danger." "Like a big touchpad?" "Yes. But if he orders a full protein ration during a fake emergency, I'll know." Tundra rose and approached the screen. It hovered just above eye level, translucent and glowing with soft tones. He sniffed once, then sat. "Encourage him," Tharnel said. "All right, Tundra. That's your menu. You hungry?" Tundra looked at the screen, then tapped the food icon with his nose. It changed color, followed by a soft chime. A small compartment beneath the terminal opened and dispensed a cube of nutrient-rich meat substitute. "That was too fast," Tharnel muttered. "He's food literate," Bennett said. "You underestimate how much time he spends watching me eat." Tundra crunched the cube, then turned back to the icons. He tapped the danger symbol. The room lights dimmed to red. A warning tone played. Tharnel immediately canceled it. "False report." Tundra wagged his tail once and sat again. "He's testing it," Bennett said. "He wants to see what the buttons do. He is not a toddler. He kind of is, though. A furry one. I need him to communicate, not prank the interface. Maybe let him understand consequences first." Tharnel stared at the creature. Tundra tilted his head. Then, without prompting, he tapped the discomfort icon. The screen displayed a diagram of a generic quadruped. Tundra nudged part of it with his nose, an area near the back hip. The projection zoomed in. Tharnel blinked. "He's identifying pain? He's been limping a little after long walks. I figured it was the cold tile." Tharnel knelt and ran his fingers gently across the indicated spot. Tundra didn't move, but his ears rotated backwards slightly. "They're swelling. Minor, but present." Tharnel stood and keyed in a request for a scan. "Why didn't you mention this sooner? I didn't see him favor it until yesterday. I assumed he was just tired. He's compensating. That takes behavioral discipline. Or he didn't want to worry me." Tharnel raised a brow. "You honestly believe he's capable of that level of emotional forethought?" "Yeah. Don't you?" The scan confirmed a strain in the gluteal muscle group, nothing serious, but enough to cause discomfort. Tharnel prepared a localized cooling pad and attached it to a flexible harness. Tundra submitted to the fitting with only a brief sigh. "Apply twice daily," Tharnel said, handing over a supply of the pads. "And reduce his movement radius. I'll keep him indoors." "Good. He's not invincible." "No one is," Bennett said. The next morning, Tharnel arrived early before the corridor lights had fully warmed to blue. He was surprised to find Tundra waiting outside the lab, already harnessed, tail still. Bennett stood beside him, holding a datapad. He wanted to come, Bennett said. Stood at the door until I got dressed. Tharnel opened the lab. Fine. Let's try something else. He brought up the terminal again, this time modifying the icons to include a memory recall function. Tundra watched the change, ears twitching once. Then he walked to the screen and tapped the new icon. A simple playback began, a recording from the previous day's scan. Tundra sat. His eyes tracked the projection. Memory recognition, Tharnel murmured. He knows what it is, Bennett said. He remembers what happened. The projection ended. Tundra tapped the approval icon. Tharnel reset the screen. Now let's see if he can distinguish between shared and personal memory. He loaded a new visual footage from a prior incident in the medbay, the one involving the worker who'd been injured. Tundra watched. His ears folded slightly. When the playback ended, he tapped the danger icon, then the discomfort one. Bennett exhaled slowly. He remembers Gregor's accident. He recognizes it as separate from himself, Tharnel said. He's categorizing external events. That's empathy. Or pattern recognition. Same difference. Tharnel didn't argue. Hours later, after Tharnel had logged every response, every icon choice, and every playback cue, he sat back in his chair and rubbed his temples. I need a break. You want me to take him? No, Tharnel said. Leave him. Bennett frowned but nodded and left without protest. Tundra remained sitting near the console, watching Tharnel with something that could have been interest or could have been hunger. It was difficult to tell with canines. I don't understand you, Tharnel said aloud. Tundra wagged his tail once. You don't react the way you should. You don't follow the aggression curves. You don't fit the mold. Tundra yawned. I have spent my entire career studying non-sapient behavior in relation to environmental stressors. You should not be able to assign symbols to memory. Tundra nudged the terminal, bringing up the approval icon. Tharnel stared at it. Then at the creature. That's not how this works. Tundra tapped the discomfort icon. Tharnel sighed. You're mocking me. An hour later, Tharnel submitted his final report to the council. It was longer than most, annotated with video clips, behavioral charts, and a reluctant recommendation for official exemption. The last line read, Subject 729B, colloquially named Tundra, has demonstrated consistent self-awareness, situational empathy, and nonverbal communication capacity equivalent to that of a juvenile sapient. While not fully sentient, the subject exhibits a unique hybridization of instinct and learned response which renders prior classification obsolete. I recommend reclassification as companion class auxiliary with limited clearance. He didn't show the report to Bennett. The following week, Tundra was issued a collar embedded with a passive translation node. It didn't vocalize, it simply projected a color-coded ring that changed based on selected inputs. Green for calm, yellow for alert, red for distress, blue for request. The first time he walked through the commons wearing it, the Vocari engineer he'd once startled approached with cautious steps. Tundra paused, tail neutral, ring glowing green. The engineer offered him a strip of dried fruit. Tundra accepted it. That evening, Tharnel stood outside the shared habitat ring and watched Tundra chase a floating ball through the grassless yard. The children laughed, the lights dimmed to evening hue, and somewhere in the background, a drone played static-laced music no one had asked for. Did you ever think, Bennett said beside him, that the monster you were sure about would turn out to be the only one who listens? No, Tharnel said. But I've been wrong before. He still sneezes on people. Yes, Tharnel said. But now they say bless you. Bennett laughed. Tundra returned with the ball, dropped it at Tharnel's feet, and sat. The ring around his neck glowed blue. Tharnel bent down, picked up the ball, and threw it. Tundra ran after it like he'd been doing it for centuries. And maybe Tharnel thought he had. Just no one had ever asked what that meant until now. Nothing else needed to be proven.